Hey guys, my name is Toby and welcome back to another very exciting Photoshop tutorial where today we're going to be taking a look at how you change the colour of clothing. And I will just stress, this doesn't just have to be clothing, it can really be anything you want to change the colour of. It's quite a good technique for a number of reasons. And there's a few different ways you could go about this. So if we want to change the person of this colour's hoodie, at the moment it's red, I'd quite like it to be maybe blue, or let's say purple. I like purple, I will do that. There's a few ways we could go about this. So we could go ahead and, copy this person's hoodie onto a separate layer entirely and then change it there and do all sorts of funny things to it. Or we could do a colour select and then, there's lots of ways of going about doing this that are more complicated than they need to be, and I think I see too many people doing it when you could just do this with one simple tool, and that is by using a hue and saturation adjustment layer. And it's important to do this with an adjustment layer for two reasons. The first of which is that, let's say this is for a client and you take this to them and they say, right, well, I've made this person's hoodie purple, and they go, no, I wanted it to be yellow, and you go, oh, okay, well, all you've got to do is come back and the adjustment's still there. If you actually do image adjustments and you pick it from up here, it kind of bakes it in and then you can't change it, whereas this enables you to have that flexibility, which is always good. The other thing that is very important with this particular technique is having the ability to mask the effect in and out. So having that layer mask attached to our adjustment layer is going to be really important. So there are three things about a pixel in terms of its colour that you can change, and they are the hue, which is what colour it is, the saturation, which is how much colour there is, and the lightness, which is how light or dark that colour is. And that's it, really. Those are the three properties to be aware of. So the other thing to be aware of with this tool is at the moment it's set to master, which means that, as you just saw, whenever I move any of these sliders, it affects everything in the image. And we actually only want to affect the reds. So we can be a little bit more specific than this, because at the moment, if I push this slider all the way up to 100% saturation, you can see that it has affected the hoodie, but it's also affected bits of the grass, there's a bit of path, it's affected their face, and a number of other things. And what we want to do is, you've actually got this slider here at the bottom, so we can move this around and change which colours this particular set of sliders is going to affect. So we can actually bring this sort of down so that it's only really affecting the hoodie, which is kind of what we want. So there's got to be there's a fine line in there somewhere between where it's affecting their face and where it's not. So what I'm actually going to do, just so that we don't really have to deal with it too much, is I'm going to leave it so that it is affecting their face, and then we'll fix that in a minute. It's also affecting this tree, so we're going to have to deal with that for now, but we'll get to that in a minute. So what we want to do is put this back to 0. So I had that at 100% just so I could see what I was actually affecting. So I could set this up so that now when we change these settings, we're only going to affect the hoodie and we're not going to affect anything else. So what did we say? We wanted a purple hoodie, didn't we? So, you could mess around with the saturation or the color of this hoodie or the lightness. There's lots of ways you could do this. You could make it sort of a lilac, and using these sliders in various combinations, you can get it to any color you want. I mean, you could even go for like a sort of a horrible sort of dark brown. Whatever you want to do, the option is there to do it. And as you can see, as you're kind of moving these around, it's going to affect what these two bars are. So to give you an idea of kind of what this is actually doing, the top bar is saying, well, this is what the color started with. So when you move the hue and saturation slider around, it's basically, if I bring this back up, there we go. It's basically kind of moving around this section of the slider. Say, okay, well, these red pixels, map them to green, make them green now. And that's kind of what's going on. I don't particularly use this too much. I just kind of look at what it's actually doing on the screen. But if you want to look at it that way, that's one way of doing it. So we want, we'll make it sort of a purpley color. We can go slightly darker purple. There we go. Do something like that, perhaps. Okay, so that's pretty good. But the problem we have now is, as you can see, if I zoom in here, it is also affecting the color of their face, which is no good. So what we want to do is we want to turn this layer on, and then with our layer mask, I'm going to take my brush tool. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and then I'm just going to make sure that I'm painting with black. So I'm going to hit X on the keyboard, and it's going to swap my foreground and background colors. And now we can just come in here and just kind of fairly carefully, we can mask out where this adjustment layer is taking effect. So to swap, if you accidentally paint out some of the bit you want, if you hit X on the keyboard, it will swap your foreground and background colors. Basically anything on here that's white will be changing the color, anything that's black won't be. So we can just come in here and just kind of, slowly paint back in the right colors for this part of the image. And this is why the adjustment layer is quite important, because it does mean that you can do this and you can, actively control kind of things that should and shouldn't be colored. So if we hold down Alt, we can view the mask, and we can see there's a few little bits in here that I've missed. Is that a bit there, maybe? Yeah, something like that. So now we can see this is just affecting the hoodie. And that's pretty much it, guys. So now that we've masked this in, we could almost, we could literally do anything. So we come back down to that reds tab that we selected. We can now actually, make it luminous green or whatever you wanted to do. So to give you another idea of where this might be useful, if we were to take another hue and saturation adjustment layer and go down to like the greens, we could pump all that up. And what the problem we have now, because what I'm going to try and do is kind of just change the color of this grass a little bit, but the problem is we've now made his hoodie green. So because layers look at each other in order, this top one is looking at the green that we've just made in this layer. So if we put this one underneath it and turn it on, now when you start looking at the greens, it's not going to look at this hoodie, because if this makes sense, as far as this layer is concerned, that hoodie is red because it's looking at the layer underneath it. It doesn't pay any attention to what this one's doing. So we can come in here now with our green tab, and we can whack this all the way up. So as you can see, the way it's currently selecting the greens isn't actually grabbing all of this grass. So we can start to kind of drag this out until we start to get kind of more of what we want. And there we go. So we can drag that down. We can actually just make the grass more colorful. We can make it sort of a different shade of green. You could even try and get it to actually match his hoodie. That could be quite an interesting one. And it's just kind of color matching at this point. It's just getting it into quite the same place. There we go. That's pretty close. Something like that's probably pretty good, I think. It's just a bit different. And you can use this to control an awful lot of your image and an awful lot of the way it looks. So like we could do another one. Let's do one above this. And actually, if you're not particularly sure what color the thing you're trying to get is, you've actually got some tools down here where you can use this eyedropper tool, and it's going to go ahead and select the colors for you. So we could actually make this just totally change the feel of this shot. Maybe not by totally desaturating it. That's a little bit too dark, but you could do something like that. And now we've just got a very different sort of look and feel to this shot. And that's just with a few simple adjustments. You've changed kind of how this feels and how this looks, and you can do an awful lot with the hue and saturation tools and selecting what colors you affect and how you affect them. So hopefully that's given you a few ideas of some cool things you can do with this tool. My name is Toby. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.